happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org. And this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm. I'm thrilled to be here tonight with Miss Kate Cox.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great.
And I said Miss just because I get nervous, but you're not Miss, and you're not a Mrs. You're not MX or MS or MC or anything, which brings up, I mean, it's a weird thing, right? It used to be something that women had this designation that lets you know they married or whatever their status was.
No, I mean, I am married, but mostly I think at some point we got married along the way for health insurance reasons or others. So I have my own last name. I don't go by any. Oh yeah, I mean,
super romantic.
But the title of anything also just is unusual for me. I've never been able to call other people Mr., Mrs., Sir, Madam. It's not for me. I wasn't raised that way, so
it's weird.
It's not. Yeah.
And what way were you raised? You were raised up there in Maine. Am I correct?
I grew up in Maine. Yeah. Well, connected to that is mostly just that I was raised as a Quaker.
Oh.
Which, do you know much about Quakerism? There's a lot of public imagination of them as being really conservative, more like Shakers or Amish, kind of living simply. But just jumping into it all, the idea of deferring to someone by their status of any kind is just a really not aligned with Quaker principles of seeing. There's a great sort of sense of equality that of God in everyone, that there's nobody deserves to have their hat tipped to them just because they're the sir, they're the role of authority.
Right.
Quakers got into a lot of trouble for never swearing on Bibles in courts and stuff like that, because it was always about just everybody having their own unique connection to each other and to the world regardless of status. So it's very anti-status, is
interesting.
To wrap it up in a very easy
No
bow.
need to wrap it up. We get a whole hour.
Here we go. We're diving off the deck.
And it's super interesting. So have you ever been in a court and demurred when they wanted you to put your hand on the Bible and swear an oath?
I can't. I have a hard time saying the Pledge of Allegiance and swearing on Bibles. And I also in college and graduate school have always called professors by their first names, things like that. I'm kind of, it's a little bit in the Quaker ethos. I also just am kind of more comfortable when we're on the equal playing field of just, I think just really, if I'm going to give someone, I want to give everybody equal respect and nobody greater respect just because of their status. And I want to be careful of that. It's easy to slip into the idea that someone's more valuable or more important just because of having letters attached to their name, and I don't believe in that.
Right. Interesting. Now I feel extra dumb for asking you to refer to me as the Right Reverend Mr. Magnusson.
I'll call you whatever you want.
Yeah.
I also feel like people should be called what they want, so regardless of that, I'm okay with whatever.
Right. My pronouns are the awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's I did not know that, and that's an interesting tidbit about
it's
Quakerism.
Sort of a natural part of me. I also my parents had found their way into Quakerism in a kind of in their own personal way, because my mom was actually a Catholic nun until she was 30, and so had a really serious, hard swing the opposite direction of deference and deep, obedience and service, living in service in a certain role of her life. And I think she left the convent at almost 30 and married my dad when he was just 18. So they have this sort of rebellious nature in and of itself, so they kind of had to make their own way in terms of how they were going to describe themselves, who they were going to be, and that just sort of fed into how they raised me.
Where were they from, and how did they meet?
They're both from Bar Harbor, Maine. They both grew up where I grew up.
Okay.
They met because my mom had left the convent and gone home and was volunteering in the high school production of My Fair Lady, and my dad was playing Henry Higgins. And
because he was a senior in high school or so.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my goodness, what a story.
Yeah. I know. I think it's definitely a serious part of my orientation to the world. Their relationship is the close, the bookend to that is they got divorced the weekend I graduated high school. So it's
so that's at least 18 years.
But they really I valued their influence in my life and their own ability to make decisions that felt right for them and that called them into the way they lived in the world in a really serious, authentic way, and they modeled that for me but that story is a piece that I
best.
feel like I make an assumption, which is maybe true, that people kind of saw my mom as less scandalous because she was leaving this cloistered community. She wasn't what would have been more scandalous at the time of being divorced or having children or having an affair or something. She was, in many ways, I think, seen as a very innocent woman at a later part of her life. And
Where was the convent?
In very far northern Maine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. And you have a twin sister, is that right?
Yeah. She lives in Taos, New Mexico.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Do you get out there often?
She would like it to be much more often.
Does she get here often?
It's easier for her to travel at this point in life. But she's been there for a very long time. She moved there right after college in 2002 or 3 and has stayed there. Whereas I sort of launched out from college and moved around quite a bit. Only now in Rhine Cliff, moving here a few years ago, finally was able to cool the jets and slow down a little bit.
And did it? Was it because you had a kid and the kid was in school?
Yes, totally.
Okay.
No, it was even before he got to school. It was because having a kid was just, continuing to change and create change and opportunity and do new things and keep going. I just had to do it at a different pace and in my own way. And we moved here in 2017. And then in 2020, the pandemic hit, and, so everything slowed down, and it has been really I realized after lots of years of thinking that I had to create change in order to get where I wanted, that if you actually stay in one place, other people make change and things change anyway. So it's another way of just enjoying that part. Yeah.
Well, that's a lovely attitude. And so you landed here in 2017. You had a job?
Let's see. The 2017 move was a little bit still more in the making of how Matt and Matt Schreiber is my husband, how we had been previously for almost 2 decades together making moves, which is that we had been in New Orleans for about 5 years, and we would spend the summers in Maine to just take advantage of the seasonality of Maine and New Orleans. And Felix, our son, was almost 2, and I was really feeling like I needed a change. I didn't want to stay in New Orleans, but Matt was in Denmark on tour for the summer, and I was in Maine, and I kind of cooked up this idea that maybe we should move, and I applied for a job here in the Hudson Valley and basically got it on the phone and had to call Matt in Denmark, and we just decided in the moment that we would move here. We thought we would live in Beacon or Kingston or anywhere else but Rhine Cliff, and very last minute we had kind of run out of time, run out of options. Which
are younger, kind of hipper, and
also just moving from New Orleans,
scenes.
we thought we have to be near us. We just needed to have more energy, and I feel like we. But then we ended up really, as we were running out of time and options, found a little furnished rental in Rhine Cliff and thought, okay, we'll just do this for 90 days.
Right.
And now we're almost 7, 8 years later.
In the same furnished rental?
No, we've moved on from there, but just about 100 yards down the street. We got lucky and found a home that we wanted to stay in. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And what does he do? He's a musician of some sort,
He's an accordion
right?
player.
Right.
And has been that's what he does. He's started playing accordion. I remember we were living in Portland, Maine in 2004, and he'd been a very serious rock climber between the early 2000s.
So he already had the strong fingers.
He's really and he had played some music. He's very he speaks a lot of languages. He had done rock climbing. He's kind of he's skilled in a way that lends itself to the accordion. But we were in our little apartment in Portland, Maine, and he walked through the door and he just looked at me and said, I think the accordion is going to be my next thing.
Oh my God.
And then it just sort of and
I've heard him play. He's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. It brings so much, I never would have found my way into a love of Balkan or Eastern European folk music. And we've met so many amazing people and traveled to places and had experiences. Now having a kid who is also having access to all of that, it's just been such a gift to live with someone who, I remember when we were in I had a practicing art studio until I was about 26 or 27. We were living as creative young people, but Matt, just being an accordion player and taking that very seriously was something he was still getting used to. And a woman who runs the Maine Arts Commission, who had given him a little bit of a grant, some funding to kind of do a project, came up to me once at a party and she said, what your boyfriend is doing is very brave. And it wasn't condescending. It wasn't meant to be
The fool.
Yeah, it was really like, this is a hard path to choose. And people, like, when I say, oh, he's an accordion player, often I get asked, like, okay, so what else does he do? What else? And, just sticking to something that other people are never going to have quite a box, literally a squeeze box to fit you in.
A squeeze
anyway.
box. Have you seen that Far Side cartoon? It's like,
Ooh.
it's 2 panels. One is Welcome to Heaven, here's your harp. The other is Welcome to Hell, here's your accordion.
I mean, the accordion, you can kind of swap the accordion and the banjo for various musical jokes that are always...
But it seems so incredibly difficult and hard to play. And impossible to master. But
it was also one of the most it's like one of the most pervasive folk instruments in the world, like this in South America, Western Europe, in China, and it's a very common instrument that it can be kids' first instruments. And it also... I mean, during COVID, he had it made. He was a one-man band. He could get hired for gigs that would because...
Right. I love that. I actually hired an accordion player for a gig one time down in the city. There was this guy, Yuri.
Oh, I'm sure they know each other. I mean, it's also a very small world.
People Cafe Jules. And, actually got his album.
Do you play music at all?
No, I don't. I used to. I played trumpet way back when in the marching band and stuff.
Yeah.
And I follow some trumpet stuff on Instagram, and every time I see something, I'm like, I should just get a mouthpiece and just start
just get back into it.
Blowing some tunes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a kind of a muscle memory thing that would come back so quickly, I think. For
You'd think, part of it is having the good wind for it, too. And I don't have the wind I used to.
It's definitely, I would say one of the hardest things about living with a musician is just listening to practice. I mean, anytime Matt picks up like a new instrument, sometimes he'll want to learn violin or clarinet, and listening to someone be very new or early at an instrument takes a lot of mental endurance. It's just...
So do you play any instruments? Do you make music?
I play a lot of music. I grew up playing piano, trombone. I had the gift of parents who drove me around to lessons and made me practice. And I used to like spend all my energy hoping beyond doubt that like my dad's car wouldn't start when I had to go to piano lessons. But now I'm so grateful to have it in my life as like a way of connecting to people. Yeah,
it's so sweet. So you have a piano or two in your house, I'm guessing. Mm-hmm. Do you still play the trombone?
Yeah, I'll like sort of bump along with it pretty easily. Yeah,
well, it reminds me of another joke while I'm like bringing the cat skills in here. What do you call a trombone player reading the Help Wanted ads in Optimist?
Oh, see, these poor, like, this is what I mean. Musicians just...
Yeah.
Oh my God, I have been seeing, maybe you're picking up on something. I've seen 3 or 4 stand-up comedy shows this year. I'm trying to make stand-up comedy my 2024 joy. I'm trying to see more and more of it.
And who have you seen?
I just saw Fortune Feimster down in Poughkeepsie last week. She was really funny. Do you know her? She's...
No.
Hilarious. Fortune Feimster. I saw Alana Glazer.
Oh, Fortune Feimster. Maybe I do. Alana Glazer, I definitely do not know.
Alana did a show called Broad City.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like stoner, queer, fun, hilarious young people in the city. And then also, don't sleep on the comedy. They should sponsor your show now. At the Stissing Center, they're doing. They did a comedy night there. It was 4 comics from Los Angeles and New York, and it was bananas. It was so funny. I thought it was going to be very amateur. I was there ready to feel like, when someone is kind of new and awkward trying to do something like stand-up comedy, and it can be so... I was kind of like... I wanted to get into that feeling. I wanted to feel like, what is it going to feel like to be in... Because actually, that's a feeling that really stresses me out when someone is on stage and they're bombing. I start to just freak out inside my body for that person. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to dive into this. Let's explore why I feel this way. So I went there thinking that's how I'd feel, and I laughed I went with Avery. We laughed so hard. It was so good. And they're going to try to do like quarterly or a couple times a year comedy nights at the Stissing Center. It was really good.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And have you ever done that yourself? I mean, if you're making music, I'm guessing you performed at some point.
I have performed a lot. Matt and I used to do some pretty bizarre performance art.
Uh-huh.
Which I don't know if your deep dive on research discovered any of this, but it's deep cuts. It involved
I didn't see the YouTube deep cuts, so now you have to describe it. What was the weird performance art?
So,
was this before or after he was on the accordion?
It was when he was just getting into it. So we had just come back. I mentioned we had lived... Oh, actually, this is before we lived in Berlin. Maybe? Matt had traveled. So when Matt had done a bunch of traveling, had been in Germany for a little bit, but we were living in Portland, Maine, and we didn't really know anybody, but I was into I was working with. It's hard to figure out how to explain this, but I was basically making really large form sculptural, like spandex, lightweight aluminum frame pieces for stage and design and interior production. So it was like...
Okay, can you describe that again?
No, it's really...
Large form metal and
So imagine
spandex.
looking at like the Golden Globes or something, or like a trade show where there's like... it's like spandex, like stretch fabric stretched around lightweight aluminum frames.
Okay.
That kinda, so...
and what purpose do they serve?
What's that?
What purpose? Are they like room
So they're like
dividers,
stage elements, like big stage design elements, or in a
okay.
trade show it would have pictures of like your whatever
Just
your
sort of
brand is printed on it.
abstract design elements on a stage.
So that was like a day job I had, sewing these big structures. So I brought home a lot of free spandex, and I would make spandex costumes that were pretty far out. So this one, the first time we did it, we didn't really know anybody, and we were like, what if we pretended to be German, like a German like art duo. And I made us these like pretty strange spandex outfits, and Matt just spoke German and I was mute, and just like, it's hard to explain to make it sound interesting and not totally embarrass myself. But I made another one that was like a double spandex outfit that was connected, where similarly Matt would speak German, I would be mute, and we danced to like old cowboy. Did tap dance to old cowboy songs, and so the spandex outfit was kind of like a push me pull you. It was connected, so we would get all bound up on each other and tap dance. I don't know. I feel like I can't believe I'm describing this.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
I can't believe your research didn't uncover this. If you'd really done your job, you would know this.
I've been busy. But the Morton has talent shows.
Oh, yeah.
You still have the spandex?
We're now living...
Push me, pull you?
We could probably do a new version with Felix involved or something. It would be fun.
How old is Felix?
He's 8.5.
Okay.
At the talent show, we usually do like a family gig, but it's much more focused on him, because at this point, nobody wants to see... I don't know. I feel like in our 20s, it was easier to get other people to laugh at us being
rationalize
weirdos.
The spandex.
Yeah. That, how do we get there? Anyway,
I don't
that's
know,
me.
but I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be here. So these things live on YouTube somewhere, I'm guessing.
Probably. When we lived in Portland, Maine, in 2000, we were there from 2005 to 2004 to 2007. And we were just living there with, we were in our early and mid 20s, and
the
creative
winters are
people.
long.
The winters were long.
Is cheap.
The studio space is cheap. There were a lot of people. There was a great music scene there then. There still is, but it was just a very different time. Very affordable. And we just had a lot of friends who were getting into sort of, I feel so grateful to be of a generation where all of that happened before any kind of social media. So we landed in maybe I'm sure you feel the same way, that having a real life and a creative process or creative life before any of that overtook sort of what kind of scene we might be influenced by. So we were very impacted and influenced by the scene of people around us physically, and what we were reading about in magazines or something. But so the people who have those videos and their YouTube are oh my God, all these old platforms that don't even exist anymore that you could store things on, or that's where all of that stuff lives. Occasionally I'll find a weird link in my my AOL.com email address account that can take me to find some of that stuff, but it's probably lost to the ages. It's interesting, that part. I think I remember when MySpace, Matt and I ran a really cool studio space that was both of our studio space and then a music venue. That we called it the Soundpost. Actually, on our house, there's a big wooden thing hanging on our porch, and that's the sign from the Soundpost. It was a really special time.
This was in Portland, Maine.
In Portland, Maine. And I remember when I discovered MySpace, and there were all these musicians using it. They would show their dates of when they were going to play, and I was so people were really not coming north from Boston yet to Maine, and I would just reach out to musicians that I liked directly, which is so one-to-one. It was really cool. There was nothing in between, and just said we'll put you up in our studio space and give you dinner if you come play a show. So we got a lot of really cool music acts coming to Portland before there was ever a really big scene there. It was really nice.
Love that.
Remember MySpace? Remember the idea of
I remember Tom, my friend.
Tom. Oh my God! Oh, so far out.
My first friend. I think that's still around. Somebody said to me the other day, or I read it somewhere.
Is it really?
Like, oh, MySpace is becoming popular again.
It's such a nightmare. Did you see the piece in the New York Times today about the young girls and the mom influencers?
No.
We won't have to go down this rabbit hole, but it's very painful to read.
Yeah. Well, so let me ask this. I mean, you were talking about how lucky you were that your creativity at that point in Portland happened before social media and all that stuff. How do you deal with that with your kid? At what point did your kid, or maybe not even yet, get a smartphone, and what kind of access does he have to?
This is probably now we're touching on like the real controversial topics, but I will say our kid doesn't have a phone.
Right.
We are really, we basically, during the pandemic, when suddenly we're all at home and there was a lot of screen time suddenly in our lives because we're trying to figure out how to be two full-time people plus a kid, it really started to destroy and erode our lives. And Matt did something very special, which was to basically, for a while, we just unplugged the internet in our house. So for Felix, so he just didn't have access to a screen for a few months, and it's still like the best time our family has ever had was when like it just didn't exist in our house. It was hard for like the first 2 or 3 days, but then it became amazing, and then we kind of slowly got back into it.
But in what way did it become amazing? And what?
It was amazing where like our kid just started reading and doing things on his own, and it wasn't like there's no request for the screen,
right?
And there's nothing to miss anymore once you realize it's not there.
Was there a day or two of like, oh, I'm bored?
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's, but what happened when we got back into it and tried to do it more intentionally rather than just like doing it all the time, which was what the first part of the pandemic happened, was that Matt found this platform called Plex, which lets you, it looks like a platform like Netflix or Hulu or something like that, but you basically can just upload content to it. So we had complete control over what Felix was watching. So we could just, to your question, like, I'm not sure we're raising him in the 21st century sometimes. Like, he watches stuff, the majority of the content he watches is from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. It's
my God, I love that.
Well, I still sometimes feel like I'm not sure. I think about this with all of us. It's not just Felix, but like even kids who have full access and to the internet and to all these things, like what they're watching is still unique to their family. Like, though I grew up every night at 7:00, we were all watching the same thing on channel 2 or whatever, it wasn't.
Right.
So we had this shared cultural media narrative. And now, Felix, like, he's basically about 6 months ago, we started season 1, episode 1 of The Simpsons, and we just haven't stopped with that. So it's mostly The Simpsons at this point.
And so if my math is right, he was about 4 when the lockdown started, and 4.5 when Plex came into his life. And what were some of the first things that you put into this bucket of content for him to watch?
Persepolis was a really early one. That was like, it was, because we were like, do you know that? It's a film about, it's black and white, it's in French, and it's about a little girl's memory of being under the Shah in Iran. Like,
oh my God!
It's an Iranian Revolution film. So it's an incredible graphic novel. But this, I feel like I'm just people are gonna like call CPS on this person. But basically we were like, what can he watch that will entertain the idea that he's watching a screen, but will also not be like, give me more. So it was like a black and white cartoon in French. And then we downloaded a lot of other like French and foreign language animation. So it was like...
Did he want to learn French at some point?
He was walking around saying "Abba le chat," which means like bring down the Shah or whatever for a while. And then Monty Python. We just sort of like slowly started to get into things that we also like to watch. But it's...
But what an amazing thing, because in some way you're really helping to define his character and his sense of humor and his sensibility. And
I think so. And he's really funny.
So I was going to guess. So all of the things you dropped in the bucket, which ones did you later on say, oh, that's from that Monty Python sketch? It's something that's not him doing a sketch, but manifesting sort of the behavior that he saw somewhere in the Plex bucket.
You mean like what has influenced him the most?
Yeah, or what things have you seen him do? You're like, oh, that's weird. Then, oh, it's from this.
He definitely has a very serious, like Monty Python style sense of humor. It's hard
Right.
to like. He's in the sense of. I think he really likes Taboo. Like any kid loves Taboo, and he has a nuanced understanding of it, and in the sense of like he very easily goes back and forth sort of between death, sex, and money in a way that feels kind of evolved and fun to be around, even though we're like laughing at him. And yeah, like he kind of will make jokes about things that are not like I don't know. He just can kind of point. He kind of points at. He has like a. He can kind of lift the veil sometimes in a kind of poignant way through seeing through a moment. Does that make sense? Like he sees like the. He can kind of see the moment for what it is, if that makes sense. Like
sure.
I mean, he can also be, whatever potty humor or whatever, but yeah.
Well, not that there's anything wrong with that. Some of my best humor is potty humor.
But I think it also makes, like, one of the things that's been fun has been just choosing to rewatch things that influenced me when I was a kid. Like one movie that he really loves, which I remember renting on VHS a lot, was oh shoot, what's it called? It's about this guy who moves to Canada and researches wolves.
Oh.
Do you remember that? And
sounds vaguely familiar.
It's really bizarre. What is it called? I can't. Oh, if Matt was here, he'd be able to like jump on it. But it's just from the like a lot of these movies from the 80s that I watched with my dad. I really like watching with Felix now. So
right, that's so sweet. And do you all sit down for family dinner like 5 nights a week or 6 nights a week?
We do a lot of pizza on the go.
Nice.
Matt and Felix are really into karate, so karate kind of takes over our lives. And
nice.
With my work, I have to go to the city often. So, but it's just the three of us, so we're really like a little unit. You know, we're doing.
And what kind of work do you do?
I work at BARD for an organization called the BARD Prison Initiative that is officially in its 25th year, which is pretty amazing. And I raised the money for it. I'm the director. I don't know if I said that. I raised the money. Yeah. Yeah,
that's the one part of my research I did actually figure out. Director of development.
Yeah.
And what exactly is development? What does that encompass?
Yeah, I've done this role in a few ways for nonprofits, but it essentially is just like, any nonprofit runs not by selling things. Some nonprofits sell things, but it's finding resources, contributed revenue, earned revenue, building the financial health of an organization to make sure that it can keep not just doing what it's been doing in a bare bones kind of way, but grow and sustain, have a reserve fund build.
You said contributed revenue and earned revenue. What kind of, how does a nonprofit?
Sure. Like, so if I said, hey, Norm, would you support the BARD Prison Initiative? Can you do $50 a month? That's contributed.
Right.
If I said, hey, we do this thing that can... I could train you to do this, and it's going to cost you this much for, like it's a fee for service kind of thing. So,
okay.
Or if we just have any kind of contract where someone pays us to do something,
okay,
and where there's an exchange, that's more like a fee for service model or earned revenue.
I gotcha. Mm-hmm. And so, what kind of earned revenue does BPI?
Yeah, we have some contracts with. So BPI is. For most of the history of BPI, we have done college and prison. And then in 2015, we started to work with community-based partners outside of prison to do BARD associate's degrees, tuition-free, full-time for people who may never have been incarcerated, but still had been deterred in some way from their education. So for some of those partners, there's like an exchange where the community partner funds part of the college itself. Some of them don't, but it's something like that. But it's by far the model at BPI is private philanthropy, private funding. It's for until 2016 or so, it was entirely privately funded by individual donors, family foundations, and a few institutional foundations.
Wow. Yep. And who were some of the biggest foundations who support BPI? I assume this is a public record.
No,
so
it's like, the Ford Foundation was a very early partner. going so quickly from the personal to the professional is hard for me, but it's,
sorry.
That's okay.
You're talking about going down to the city for your work.
Yeah. But so the, the Mellon Foundation has been a big supporter of BPI. And then a number of family foundations, which sort of act as individual support as well. But then there's just thousands of people giving $10, $20, $50, $100 a month to support nationally, across the globe. People support BPI. It's kind of, it's always been one of the biggest delights about the work, which is that we work very much remotely in real ways from anybody. Like you think of, you're connected to Culture Connect or something like that. Like you're where you're really in the community. People who support your work are really actively engaged with or benefiting from what the nonprofit is doing. And with BPI, there's a group of people who benefit from the college, who are enrolled in the college, but the majority of the people supporting BPI live at 1,000 miles away and just are supporting because they believe in the idea that people are deserving of education regardless of their circumstances, and that's so powerful for me. So I really, really appreciate that.
I love that.
Yeah.
And here's a commercial, first ever commercial on the show. The majority of the people supporting Radio Free Rhinecliff are local people around here, mostly, though some of them are more far-flung. And here's the advertisement. Ready? Radio Free Rhinecliff is currently hosting our annual fundraiser. Join us on March 9th at the Epicurean, which is where we are now, the corner store in Rhinecliff. Buy tickets online at radiofreerhinecliff.org or consider a donation on our GoFundMe page, which I assume can be found on, you don't have LinkedIn, on Instagram and Facebook. And radiofreerhinecliff.org, the GoFundMe page. To support this show and others, licensing fees, acoustic upgrades to the studio, new equipment, and more.
I mean, now you're speaking in my complete love language, because this is really the thing for me, is like just moving money. Like beyond getting, people engaged in the community to redistribute what they have, and, all for a more just, equitable world in whatever way that, serves all of us the most, is like the whole reason I really do what I do. I really believe in serious redistribution of wealth. I think part of the thing with nonprofits, we were talking a little bit about this before we hopped on, I think, but that the nonprofit model has produced this sense of scarcity, the idea that there isn't enough money for all of us to go around, or, we've asked too many times to too many people, we can't ask again, or there's a competition of, you're going to ask that person for money, well, I want to ask them for money. And it just is this really inverted way of looking at it, because there could not be a place on the planet in the history of the world of human beings that has more money than we do right now. So there isn't a scarcity problem. We have a distribution problem.
Right.
And I feel really empowered by being in a position where I can, be practically be evangelical and proselytizing about the good that, not just that you're doing for people when you move money, but like, I think that, I mentioned that I worked as a creative before this in my earlier life. And I feel like in the same way that when you work as an artist or a creative person and you're really moving something from the abstract into making it manifest, that by moving money, by giving it away, without doing that, without moving it into something, it really remains just a really weird abstract concept. Money is, you can see the number in your bank account, you can see it, but it's really hugely abstract.
Right.
And then when you move it and it goes somewhere and it becomes a direct impact in someone's life, it feels so freeing and so good for people. And the more and there's like a counterintuitive thing about how the more you do of that, because we think we should hold on to it, there's got to be a limited amount to give away because we need to keep it for ourselves. But I think I did this experiment when I was in my late 20s. I had been working for a public radio and public television station in Maine, and I was doing all this work to ask these multimillionaires for, would you give us $1,000? And I remember thinking, like, come on, like $1,000, like you've got, I understand cash is fluid, whatever, but like just $1,000, I was like, I'm going to try to give $1,000 away. And at the time I was, not making a lot of money. And I told Matt, like, I'm going to give $1,000 to this, or I had decided I wanted to give it to an organization that I really cared about. It was an arts organization in Portland. And he was really like, $1,000. Okay. Like, I guess, like, go for it. Like, I don't really want to be part of it. Like, not that he didn't want to be part of it, but like, this feels stressful. And, I realized that I could have given away so much more before it actually was uncomfortable for me. And I had this inverted experience of feeling amazing by giving it away and seeing it inspire other people. And it just like set me on this course of seeing that we can all really reevaluate and rethink the stories that we've been exposed to and indoctrinated about around money and who has it and what they're back to the very core principles of like who is of value and who is deserving and why and what to do with our money. It's
so funny. When I thought about your job in development, I'm like, well, you're getting it in. You're trying to get the money in. And I didn't think about what you're just saying now, because in the other way, you're giving it away. You're giving away to BPI in these programs that have sort of tangible results, and you can see that. And so I want to ask, how closely do you follow the people, the actual humans, the individuals who your programs touch?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I work with a lot of them. A lot of alumni. Do you mean the alumni of BPI?
Yeah, I mean...
Or do you mean the donor? I don't know who you mean.
Well, the alumni.
Yeah. I mean, there's 1,000 alumni who have come home from prison, who are living in New York and across the state and across, in lots of places. Many of them are working, like a lot of, there's now, I think, 14 or 15 people working on staff at BPI who are alumni.
Oh, that's great.
And it's a network of social capital for itself. That's just an amazing network of people doing really, really amazing things.
And what facilities does BPI around here?
Yeah, we're in 7 prisons in New York State. There's 5 for men and 2 for women. And many of them, I mean, part of the, the design of it when it was founded is looking at the prison landscape of the Hudson Valley. So we're at Eastern Correctional in Ellenville, which is it's the first and largest campus that BPI has had for a long time. At Woodburn, Coxsackie, Greenhaven, Fishkill, and then Taconic, which is a women's facility. And then we just a year and a half ago opened a campus at Albion Correctional, which is very geographically out of the way. It's in Rochester, out near Rochester. But want to do more for women who are incarcerated in New York. So we opened a campus there. And it's so there's a little over 400 students enrolled across those 7 campuses right now. So it's seriously like small college, unto its own.
Right.
And everybody is enrolled in associates and BA degrees.
In associates what?
And BA.
Oh, and
bachelor's
BA.
degree. Yep.
Wow. Just amazing. And you said there's been 1,000
alumni who've come home. Yeah.
Who've come home?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Returned home from prison, left prison.
Oh.
This is, I mean, I think that's like
funny.
a major thing is like the vast, vast majority of people who are incarcerated in the U.S. leave prison. So it's very rare actually for people to be in, although more and more some of the growing demographic especially in New York State is aging people in prison. And I want to shout out a really great organization called Release Aging People from Prison that does a lot of really good work in that space.
What's it called again?
Release Aging People from Prison, RAP. Yeah, but I think it's a great honor to have sort of landed in the Hudson Valley, found my way to working with BPI, and to be, I think I feel very aligned personally and professionally and geographically and all, from a community standpoint. It feels,
and spiritually, I'm guessing, as you describe all of this, I think this must sort of jive well with your Quaker upbringing. Yeah,
it's funny. For me, at this point, that's more like a philosophical journey. My mom has gone from being a Catholic to being a Quaker to being a Buddhist at this point. So she's always like, Katie, I just think you should be, she's like always trying to get me to like really commit to some spiritual thing. And I'm just like, it's just, I'm just kind of on the ride, just kind of doing my own thing.
That's funny.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's the slowing down and the arc of how we got to Rhinecliff is just so many moves. It's so many moves from Maine to internationally to other states, back to Maine, back to international, back to, and I feel like just slowing down has been one of the most important things of sort of just coming into like attunement with all those elements of seeing like, okay, yeah, when you just kind of slow it down and look at what's in front of you and you don't have to just be like, for not you, but like I used to feel like I had to be moving very fast all the time, seeking, and now I feel like I can I've just figured out that I can move the dial a little less and get still the desired outcome.
Right. You said that earlier, that you staying put, being still, and things coming to you, the progress coming to you. Can you give an example of that?
Totally. Let's see.
Good answer. Because I love that. I love that notion of instead of like being out seeking all the time, which people are more or less told that you should be out seeking.
Yeah.
Just staying put and waiting, being receptive.
Yeah. I mean, so for example, when we first got here to Rhinecliff, I was working for this organization, the New York Council of Nonprofits, where I was like a consultant for nonprofits doing strategic planning, fundraising, consulting, blah, blah, blah. And saw BPI and was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I'd love to work for them. And a job came up that was really right in line with me. And I applied for it. And I was like, there was two of us and the other person got the job and I didn't get it. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I'll just kind of stay with this organization. I'm not super happy here. And then, like 7 or 8 months later, the job came up again. The other person who had gotten the job had left or it hadn't worked out, whatever. And I reapplied for the job and got that job.
Oh, nice.
And then,
and what was that job?
That was just like the assistant director of development or something like that. And then, I had been at BPI. The pandemic happened. Everybody was thinking like, are we going to stay? What are we going to do? Is this the time to make a pivot? And then the woman who, Laura Liebman, who had been the first and very long time director of development at BPI, who had really built an incredible program, she left to take another position, and I had the opportunity to be promoted to be to join the director. And that was fantastic. I mean, it was just like, it took a bit of adjusting to, because I think I was still trying to figure out what I really wanted to be doing. But once I sunk into it and kind of just, sort of stayed the path with it and let it work itself out, it brought great happiness. So I think that, other people leaving, I think this is one thing. I still love change. Sometimes when my colleagues or friends tell me they're moving or that someone's leaving, I'm always like, do it. Because I know, like, sometimes we think it's going to be this hard conversation and it's going to be so painful to tell somebody that they're leaving. But like all these changes that other people made, somebody not working out, someone leaving and leaving room for a promotion, like it's opportunity for other people.
Right.
So, and you're going on to opportunity for yourself. The more we all make changes, it's good for all of us.
Right. So do you ever get restless?
Yes, I do get restless all the time still.
And what do you do for that? Do you have any tactics?
Yeah, I'd like fill my tabs with MLS listings of like, like gotta go properties in New Zealand and like look at jobs that I might do there. I mean, I do really serious, like I put things like in the cart kind of thing. I'll be like, okay, we got to hit set, like I'll just like go down the rabbit hole of building out the whole reality of like whatever it is,
And where are you going in New Zealand?
Well, oh my God, I had been looking for, this is like deep winter existential crisis. I just this winter, like over the holidays,
well,
I was
there now,
looking
of course.
I was basically looking for off the grid properties anywhere, just like trying to find weird listings of real estate that would be just off the grid. I just wanted I want to get away. That's usually my
right.
I just want to go completely away. And I found this like bank-owned property in New Zealand that was pretty special.
Like bank-owned, so like you're looking at places for sale.
Yeah.
But
Totally,
what part of New Zealand?
Oh, it was, just the listing, wherever the listing took
you
me.
Don't
like
care.
I don't know, but then I'm like, oh, now I'll look around and see what's there, and there are all these mountains, and oh my gosh, there's Felix could go to school there. I mean, I let it all just kind of totally.
Have you been there?
No, I have a friend who lives there now, so I think maybe I was thinking like, oh, she had moved there 10 years ago and now has full citizenship or something. So I was like, oh, she could get us in. I mean, it's just, I daydream in a major way. And I'm like, that's enough. The daydream is totally satisfying.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice. You found a way to sort of like cure the restlessness.
Yeah.
So you moved. It doesn't sound like you moved around a lot when you were younger. You said you lived in Nashville for a number of years.
My parents had gone to Nashville to do some graduate school, so my twin and I were born there. And then when we were 6, we moved back to Maine. And then I was in Maine. But it's funny. Like this seeking energy is like it's definitely. It was a chapter of my life, even when I was in
seeking energy.
This sort of like I always want to do something new, do something fresh, put myself like totally in the like my temperament is like if you were like, hey Kate, would you just like stand up in front of this crowd of 8,000 to 10,000 people and just kind of keep it, just say a few lines while I'd be like, sure, let me go. Like I'm very comfortable there. If I have to prepare and like be really prepared to do something, that's actually more stressful for me. So when I was younger, I just like speaking about being 6 and going back to Maine, like just from those early years, I was always like trying new things, pushing myself to be different from other people in some kind of way that felt like when I was in 6th grade, I left school for a semester with my dad. I left high school early, but when I got to college, I made them let me design my own major. Like I've always just kind of had to push against the grain a little bit for some kind of probably discoverable thing in therapy to go through, but it's sort of, but it just gave me this memory of being in 3rd grade, which is actually how old Felix is now, where I had gone to a library and learned how to fold a like origami crane. Which basically someone had shown me how to do, and I had kind of done it under the instruction of another person. And I went to my teacher and was like, I learned how to do this, and I'm going to teach the whole class. And she got all this really fancy origami paper, and I stood up in front of the whole class and just froze and realized, like, oh, I didn't really learn how to do this, and I definitely can't teach a room of 8-year-olds how to do it. I remember just like, but that kind of falling on my face kind of thing, I'm very comfortable with it. I've done it a lot. It doesn't bother me
anymore. But
no, I now have got like more skills under my belt, and
the paper crane thing must have been traumatic.
I couldn't learn things in a way that other people did. I always had to like throw myself really into the deep end, into a way of, and then learn from there. I felt more comfortable learning like that for some reason.
So when you're going to the city, as you say you do, to meet with a major donor, a new foundation, or a rich alumni or whatever, how much research do you, and how much do you just sort of wing it?
I do very little. I might like do a news search or something like that just to make sure that I know, like, I try to like, I'm a little bit turned off by the like deep research part of fundraising and development, because as if it just, to me, doesn't feel like a real relationship building. And the most money and the most successful I've been sort of in raising money has been through real relationships, not like when someone tells you like, oh yeah, actually, like I grew up in Maryland, and you are hearing it for the second time because you already Googled it or something. It just doesn't build authentic relationships to me. So I do try to be not caught off guard, but even if I'm caught off guard by a piece of information that someone might assume I know, that's very easy to say like, oh, I really didn't know this. Like, thank you for sharing it with me, So it's
right.
It's pretty easy. I would say I prefer to just in the moment and talking with people discover together what they're really connected with about the thing that I'm talking about, and then sort of figure out what they want to do, what I have some opportunities. I try to be prepared with like what I think my opportunity is that I'm going to share with someone, but I don't try to figure out like what I think the other person wants to do.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
That's just my style. I mean, lots of people want to go like, I want a book of research, so I know, I like to make relationships with people.
Right. And do you have facts and figures about the effectiveness of BPI that you trot out in these meetings?
I mean, people usually have lots of different, it's like people fall into buckets of things, and they might, but yeah, I have a wide range because
Can
people
we hear some?
About the effectiveness of BPI?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, the effectiveness of BPI is like the effectiveness of Bard College or any really profoundly special liberal arts college, which is that people who go to the college come away with like an intellectual curiosity and depth of and breadth of engagement with humanities, with social studies, with math and biology that that sends them on the path for the rest of their life, wherever they're going to go professionally. And that's true for people who are incarcerated with BPI. The full breadth of Bard College is brought to these prison facilities where, and it's not, it's for free and it's happening in prison. So it's easy to assume that it would somehow be diminished or watered down or whatever, but that's the absolute opposite of that is the case. It's a very, very, very rigorous, ambitious college environment. Do really want to plug that everybody should watch College Behind Bars, which Lynn Novick, Sarah Botstein, and Ken Burns made about as a 4-part series where you can just sort of see evident sort of the rigor of the college. So that's just like to put it in the context, sort of like the effectiveness of it. But there's like inevitable question about the idea of like education as some kind of acting against recidivism, intervention against recidivism for people returning home from prison. So in 2021, BPI with Robert Tynes, who's our director. He's runs the college and prison operations, but also is the director of research and evaluation. Did a study with the Yale Policy Lab on the effects of college and prison on recidivism, which showed what we've known and can see and what people reflect for a very long time, which is that people who are engaged with BPI and come home with degrees, the recidivism rate is about 4%. And so the average is 50% of
Right.
people. Although, I mean, things are really shifting. So, like, less is more. There's a lot of legislation passed in New York State recently about this that people should. The Clean Slate Initiative just passed in New York, which is going to be major. If it just passed in November, a woman named Sheena Mead, who runs the Clean Slate Initiative, which is a national movement to basically seal records for people coming home with from prison after it. There's a lot of different models for it, and New York's is pretty robust, but after period of time, 3 to 5 years for different, it depends on what your conviction was, but that your record would be sealed. So
wow.
So people can apply for jobs, apply for housing, and not be carrying around the burden of felony conviction in that way that disproportionately affects their ability to have jobs that would otherwise
Right.
lead them towards stable, secure footing. So, people who have access to education like BPI and prison really typically don't go back to prison. That's
right.
one, if that's sort of what you're getting at.
And it is kind of, I was thinking like what kinds of things you say to donors, and if that 4% stat is really motivating, and I think it would be. So that's what I was getting at.
I mean, I think the main thing is like the other piece is that BPI was founded in 1999 when right on the heels of the Clinton Crime Act, which had been a massive investment in mass incarceration, was building mass incarceration, and made this that act of legislation banned federal Pell funding for incarcerated students. So college and prison is something that's been part of American prisons for a very long time. Prior to that, lots of people have been educated while they were spending time in prison. And so we were... overnight, people who were having access to college, suddenly these programs were gone. Colleges didn't have the funding for it. And so that's why BPI was funded so privately for a very long time, because it was not fashionable to support, like even now with trends in philanthropy and other things, it's very fashionable to support the idea that people who are incarcerated or in communities that have been over-criminalized, over-policed, over-surveilled that we need to reinvest and put money back into these communities. But that was not something that was a common feeling in the early 2000s.
Right.
So the return of federal Pell grants for incarcerated people came back in 2020, 21 under the Trump administration. It had been trialed under the Obamas in 2016 with great success. It's a very bipartisan reform effort is education. College.
I thought they were around for much longer than that.
What?
The Pell grants.
Well, so they were banned for incarcerated. They've been around for everybody else forever.
Okay.
But for incarcerated students,
Gotcha.
They were banned from 1999 to 2020, and all the states followed. So there's So in 2021, Governor Hochul repealed the ban on New York TAP assistance. So there's state and federal funding now for people who can go to college while they're incarcerated.
Nice.
Yeah.
And so of your operating budget, how much comes from state and federal funding? How much comes from foundations and individuals and stuff?
So it's, I think, socially, politically really meaningful, and we're so grateful to city and state partners who send funding our way, but it's the actual funding amounts are like about 15% of the funding comes from state and federal, not federal, but state and city funds. 60% of the money comes from foundations and individuals, gifts everywhere from, $1 up to 6 figures, and we have a pretty diverse funding stream. We get 60% or so from foundations, individuals, small donors, city and state funding, the federal Pell and TAP assistance, and then,
And what are the plans? Are you all spreading out, like incorporating new places? If somebody's running a program somewhere and they go out of business, do you sort of bring them in?
So we have a national engagement team. In New York, we just recently last summer underwent a pretty big expansion just within the facilities that we already operate in, because 2 other colleges who had been running college and prison closed completely. So 2 small Catholic colleges, one at a facility for women, one for men. The colleges just lost their accreditation. Had financial hardship. So we enrolled another 100 students or so. But the national effort is to support other colleges, other universities, to start and build sustainable college and prison efforts, so that so that people who have had this return of educational access see it as part of their experience for a long time. It's like the sort of pendulum swinging of programs starting, programs failing, programs being underfunded, programs being diminished. That is something that's sort of been hard to stabilize for a long time. So our hope is that with the return of Pell funding, that the field will be really stabilized.
Right. Yeah. And do you often go out and sort of help other places set up their own program, but then you're not involved once their thing is up and running?
Yeah, we help facilitate something called the Consortium for the Liberal Arts in Prison, and that's 15 other colleges and universities, and it's been a really wide range of support. So some of them we've had a really active role in launching and hiring or helping find the early staff who are going to help lead it, and others just are really just need a little bit of support, guidance, partnership, and we bring each summer in July to BARD, we bring 24 or so practitioners or people in the field of college and prison to BARD's main campus for this thing we call the residency, to sort of learn BPI's approach and immerse themselves in sort of how to do it the way BPI does.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just amazing.
Yeah.
So how many years you been there?
5.
Just 5?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
And let me ask this. What do you think makes you especially adept at that job?
I like that question.
Or in general, what would make a director of development especially adept in that role?
I think you need a lot of optimism to raise money year in, year out for any organization. Just knowing that you can do it again and having faith in yourself is like, every fiscal year, every year like turns over. You have to like do it all over again, so it's sort of like, sometimes it's this feeling of like, is everybody going to come to my party again? Like I had a great party once. I hope they come again, and I think,
and so do you do that? Do you measure your performance year after year?
I mean, we have to, we're growing.
Right.
It's, yeah. And, but I don't mind that. I also think that like, being told, I think a lot of people who, when they think of like, often when I tell people what I do, they're like, I could never do that. I could never ask for money. I could never talk about money. And I think like, it's sort of I actually don't spend a lot of time talking about money. It's, I think people, but I do get told no a lot, and that's okay.
Right.
I think that's something that, but there's, when I do some fundraising training with people and thinking about how to do it, with nonprofits or boards or whatever. And I think a big exercise I do with people is to like walk through their earliest memories of money, because usually the idea that like I just could never do that, I could never talk, it's like it's connected to like it's connected to it's connected to what you were taught about money and taught about value. Yeah.
So interesting. Well, guess what? We're out of time.
Okay.
I can't even believe it. But because I have so much more to ask. I wanted to ask about cooking with Felix or baking with Felix. Somebody put me onto that.
He's convinced we're going to run a bakery. He's named it. This is the best thing. He named it Family.
The bakery.
Yeah.
I love that.
We just need a shop and about $1 million, which I should be able to get for us, but I can't.
Well, come on. Put on the fundraising hat. Well, Kate Cox, thank you so much for being here. Everybody, thanks for listening. Have a fabulous Friday night and a spectacular weekend.
You too. Thanks.